Good afternoon, ladies, gents, clients, followers, and the like. My name is Jonathan Bangle, and I'm the host of Naked Tax Talk, where we get naked and bear down to the naked truth about our taxes. And we do that by having an open conversation about our personal lives, our business lives, and of course, our money lives. Um, I ask all the time, JB, why do you show up naked on your show? Why do you insistent on showing up with just your chest and assist showing? Well, the reason why is because this is how I know how to cultivate courage. I do it by being vulnerable. I do it by tapping into what I know to be true. And that is when we show up the way that we were born and brought into this world. It's like RuPaul says, we're born naked, but everything else is just drag. So today I'm actually joined with a really good friend of mine. His name is Paul Spears II, and we'll get into that in just a second. But he works with Colonial Life, and this guy is like freaking phenomenal because what he brings to the table has a massive and radical change and a benefit to your business as a business owner. Most small taxpayers, entrepreneurs specifically, they contemplate and wonder, how in the heck do I bring on people into my world? How do I hire people without having it break the bank? Well, it turns out that you don't have to always pay your employees through a wage. We can also pay them through something called compensation, things like employee benefits. And so Paul happens to be an expert in one of those fields as it relates to business, as it relates to employee benefits. It's a win-win situation for both people because on one hand, the employee feels valuable. They also receive something in exchange for their services as well. And the business owners gets to deduct it from their tax return as a business related expense. And then here's where it gets really juicy. Normally, when you give something of monetary value to an employee, let's say, or to somebody else, they end up having to pick up the tab and we call taxes. But in this case, it becomes a tax-free transaction. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Paul Spears. And here we go, Paul. So welcome to Naked Tax Talk.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Yes. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell the world out there, if you guys are watching, you guys are just tuning in, this is an interactive show. So if you want to ask us questions in real time and get real time answers, now's the time to literally pick our brains. So, Paul, introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you about? I did a little bit in the beginning, but sell it, baby.
Fair enough. So just a little bit about myself. I'm an agent through a company called Colonial Life, not Colonial Penn.
Oh, sorry.
That,
Did I say Colonial Penn?
no, I don't think so, but just to clear the air. So yeah, it's basically what the company specializes in. It's just building that connection and partnership with local businesses, helping to set the tone and the tempo for helping to keep our businesses in shape. Because of course, as they say, the lifeblood of the American economy is small business. So that's basically what I do with other professionals that I network with. You know, if I know they do good business, I help lead them to other referrals. But through Colonial Life specifically, the bread and butter of it is introducing voluntary benefits. So this means, and where Colonial Life really excels is we have 7 different, opposed to other companies. I'm not going to say their names, but usually they only have like 3 products. But you know, we have anything from cancer assist programs to accident, which is 70% of our claims, disability, dental, hospital indemnity, and the list goes on. And what we really help do is just introduce those benefits for to the employer for free, so they don't have to contribute that 25%, that 50%. Because what we found is that if 83% of employees, if they just have the vehicle to hop into for the benefits, they will pay for it themselves.
So let me see if I understand this. So what you're saying is this. Now I do, but I'm going to translate it into the rest of us so that we can get this, right? So okay, so what you're saying is that you bring to the table a benefit to really for the purpose of the employee, and it's voluntary, meaning it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory on the employer side, right, to contribute to this benefit, correct?
Correct, and that's the great thing. We don't require any participation. Like, hey, it's great you have 20 employees, but unless you give me 10 or 15 of them, we're not going to do business with you. If we can only help one person, that's what we're there to do. And same goes with the products. If they only want one product at $10, that's totally fine as well. And the thing with it is it's completely symbiotic, right? It's helping the employer give benefits to their employees, and it's helping the employees help protect their own livelihood as well.
That's awesome. So now the employer, if they choose to pay for these benefits on behalf of the employee, they can do that.
Correct. And we do have that. We do have a lot of those business owners that treat their employees like their family, and they love them just like anybody else, and they help participate 25% or $25 a month. We have a lot of different owners doing different things out there here in Arizona.
Okay. So that brings me to a question. So Sexy Paul, have you always been in Arizona?
Great question. So of course, by myself, technically, it makes me feel really old, but I was born in California on March Air Force Base, which was disbanded 1 year after my birth. So where I was born and no longer exists.
Wow, what did you do, Paul? What did you do? They totally
I know. They had the last perfect baby pop out, and they're like, we can't do any better. We're shutting this bad boy down.
Oh my gosh. So did you grow up in California then?
I've actually been here in Arizona since I was 3.
Oh, okay. So you're in
I
Arizona.
consider myself to be a native. Grew up in the West Valley my whole life. Anything east of the 17 I call it New Mexico. So I'm a West Side boy. I grew up in Surprise, and I love it here in Arizona. The grass isn't always greener on the other side, so I'm here to stay.
That's cool. Now, so were you always involved in helping employees to help helping employers with their employees with these voluntary contributions, or were there other things about your life? Like share a little bit, like,
Fair enough. So I've always been very community centered. Even now, 10% of everything that I make goes to charity. So that's a huge part of it right there. But I've always been very community oriented. Camp I would go to every year. This is actually the first time in 10 years I'm not going because of coronavirus, but they do a project like Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and it's up in Prescott. Every year we take a deserving family, we help fix their situation. One time it was a women's abuse and homeless shelter, helped do that 1 year. So as far as like community work, it's something I'm very strong and oriented with. With Colonial, I'm actually a little bit more recent with it, but I have been doing insurance for all of my professional career, as well as working with behavioral health services for the trans community, the LGBT. They help homeless people, veterans, basically anyone who's been marginalized. It was a place called La Frontera Arizona Impact, and they're a great community resource. They have 6 different valley locations, so you know someone who needs help of any kind, let them know and they can definitely help you.
Wow. I got some feedback. Hold on. What's the name of the place that if they need help they can reach out to?
Yeah, I'm just gonna type it up right here. It's called La Frontera.
Oh yeah, La Frontera. Frontera. I think I spelled it correctly. So I'm about to put it in the comments so then in case people needs to know.
Copy and paste.
Right? Did I do it right? Hopefully, I don't know. Okay, so let me ask you this. So Paul, because this is what I've learned about my show. It's kind of like having sex. Like we got to like warm up to each other. It's like foreplay, we kind of like got to warm up a little bit.
Different strokes for different folks.
Listen, that's what we're talking about. I think what really turned me on, besides your sexiness, is that when you were like, look, I have a solution that can actually help to improve employee morale, at the same time help everyone else's bottom line. Correct? So what are some products, like what are really popular products? You kind of sort of alluded it to it earlier, but what are some products that people really do kind of typically take advantage of?
Right. So I would say the most popular happens to be your traditional life insurance. We have both whole life, which is more of an investment because it's a guaranteed payout. So you will get the money back regardless, and you actually get a lot more, even if you don't die. There's also term. So term T, think temporary. That's cheaper, and it's a bigger payout for paying your mortgage, paying whatever debts you had. So it kind of just depends what you're looking for. By far, the 70% of our claims are all accident claims. I literally signed up a company just 3 weeks ago. I got a phone call yesterday. He is now in the hospital. Somebody hit him and put him in the hospital. He's been there for a little bit now. and we're going to help take care of them. So, it's just when you hear things like that, it's horrible to hear that, but it makes me feel good knowing that I went to those businesses that usually people won't bother with. They want to all go to the East Valley, work with Scottsdale, work with the $1 million companies. I like to work here in my own community. And if I was 3 weeks late or whatever it was, or the employer wasn't open-minded enough to the idea, financially, this guy could be in very bad straits. So accident is a huge one. Disability is as well. And for myself, my personal one is I always try to tell people about the cancer plan, because it costs about $1 a week. My grandmother Maria just died from cancer.
Oh, wow.
It's in everybody's family, and she's not the only one in my family who has had it. So it's a personal one of mine, but sometimes, people don't take things seriously until it happens in their own personal life.
That's exactly it. By the way, you have some comments coming in. I want to recognize Mika. She's one of my really good friends, and she says, "Love that you both are shirtless." So yes, that's right, Mika. I brought some really cute meat to the market today. Just kidding, but
organic.
Anybody who knows me, I love to flirt. That's like my big thing. Like, you can ask one of my friends, Jacob. He's been on my show a few times, and he came here also revealing his sexy white boy body all day long. And I mean, it's just how I roll. And then I got Mark, who's saying, "Naked tax guy, always hustling." Yes, Mark, you better believe it. I am constantly hustling and bustling, because here's the thing I know about business, babies. Nobody knows you exist. Nobody knows what the services you offer unless you're constantly talking about it. It becomes literally our lives, always inserting what we do with what we do, right? Otherwise, people don't know. Would you agree with this? Paul?
Very much so. They say, if you build it, they will come. But these are a little bit different times, so it's all about that image that you can put out there.
Absolutely. And actually, Paul, one of your techniques is door to door, right? Are you still doing that even during COVID?
Correct. So for myself, again, just find those marginalized companies. Maybe they don't have the tech savvy or know-how, or they're just kind of really blue collar, and they're like, word of mouth is how I was raised, and that's how I'm going to die. Most of the companies I work with are all trades, and they're all tucked into the streets you would never, ever, ever drive down.
Wow.
So those are the people I go out, just go door to door, call the phone numbers if there's just a billboard, and I see how I could try to help them. And 9 out of 10 companies I've helped, they're all the same situation.
Wow. So what's like the common fear or the common issue that you see about small business owners as it relates to how do they empower their employees?
They say the first 2 years are the hardest, and that's kind of your make or break years, and how well did you business plan. I would say that most business owners deep down really do wish that they could provide the very best for their employees.
Agreed.
And when you have only 10 people in the office and you're out there working in the field, they do become like family. So they do wish that they could help kind of take care of their children, right? But benefits and state laws can make it difficult, because they put mandatory minimums. And so in order just to stay away from that, owners just say, you know what, guys, 1099 or W-2, but just no benefits. And that's why I actually really enjoy this work, is because it lets people know there's a whole nother option out there, and it can really help everybody involved.
Now, you mentioned that you kind of were involved in insurance for a while, but is this literally the thing that you did when you graduated and you were like, I'm going to go do insurance?
Not quite. So foreign language, actually. I have my degree for interdisciplinary studies, and with a minor in Spanish and public health.
So entonces tú hablas español también.
¿Ah?
Entonces tú hablas español.
Sí, pero hoy en día practico más de portugués y holandancia, pero aún es muy importante para alguien y para todo que vive en Arizona para aprender, escribir, hablar, anything.
Even if it's nomás un poquito más, es todo. Es todo que estás importante. It's interesting. So ti falas português. So what other languages do you speak? So you mentioned Spanish, Portuguese, and what else?
Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, German, French, Italian.
Oh.
Just picked up Swedish and Esperanto, or not Swedish and Turkish.
Oh, wow.
But I also use Russian and Korean.
Oh, хорошо.
Хорошо.
Хорошо. Очень хорошо. Да.
I feel like I forgot some other languages in there.
That's more than me. I thought I was like a freaking badass with languages. Я читала по-русски в университете. So, that's, that's as far as I go, but I can read and write in Cyrillic, believe it or not. And, mais je dis tout le monde que mon deuxième langue, c'est français. Et moi, j'adore pas français. C'est une langue que j'adore. C'est mon deuxième langue. Je dis ça.
Ah ouais? De quel département? De quel département tu préfères?
Pardon?
De France, de Haïti, d'Afrique?
Non, de France. Ouais, j'ai tout en France. J'étais là pour une famille échangée en été. 1997, j'ai gagné un bourreau pour aller en France. Et donc, je restais là pour un été avec une famille échangée et en sud de France, à côté du pont.
Ouais, Marseille.
Et voilà. Non, c'est la côte de Biarritz, Bordeaux à peu près, de ça, de Pyrénées-Atlantiques. Et voilà, c'est la raison que je parle français exactement comme ça. Et voilà, mais quand je connais quelqu'un qui parle français, immédiatement, je mettrai mon français. Voilà.
Est-ce qu'il y a été un garçon très mignon?
Ouais, c'est ça exactement. Oh, bonjour monsieur, ça va?
Ouais, bien sûr.
So for my Canadian fans, most of them are like, yes, we kind of get this, right? So for my non-English speakers, I think we just went through like 3 languages in just a second here. But yeah, I was just telling how I speak French, right? So, but it's funny. I remember when I was a kid, and Spanish is because of family, con mi familia. And I remember like they'd say, but why are you learning French for? Like nobody speaks French, only just, Spanish, right? Or English.
Okay.
And lo and behold, of course, I've just been a huge Francophile, like everything French, I just really enjoy and love and stuff. So I, of course, studied it, right? And then, of course, I would go on to speak it. I let go of my Russian studies because it started taking over my French. And I had to let it go because it was creeping up into it. And I got worried, I got scared. And I was like, but I really like speaking French. And it's funny because to this day, il y a beaucoup de personnes que je rencontre qui parlent français. I meet a lot of people who speak French. And it's kind of phenomenal how that turns out. But c'est ça exactement. Voilà. Tu vois?
Yeah, the same thing with my, with German. And my German's so bad now because of my Dutch. And with my Spanish, it's so bad because of my Portuguese now. But yeah, it's follow your passions, right? And actually here, when I worked with the behavioral health services, there was a refugee center right upstairs. So actually, there's a huge West African community here. There's a huge Haitian community. There's a lot of Canadians here, as you know, here in Arizona. This is like their little, their Florida or something like that. And a lot of people here, and they speak French. And it has helped. And people say, food is the way to a man's heart, or to anybody's heart, really. When it comes to business, knowing even the niceties, knowing just silly expression really does open up their heart to having a sincere and genuine conversation with them about how you can help protect them in their business. So that is actually a huge part of my model as well.
I love that. And especially because you can do it in a way, in a lot of ways, even in their language to some degree, right? Like so let's go to Sales 101, right? Which is people connect with us on a lot of commonalities, right? The things that we're familiar with each other, right? There's this
tribalism, right?
Right, yeah. And so, si je peux parler français tout de suite, immédiatement, le sport, ils sont ouverts tout de suite. Parce que je parle français comme eux, non? So it's like, it's like we can switch into that and we can just immediately. I remember I had a gentleman that came here and had a French last name. And I said, I say his French last name. And he says to me, he goes, yeah, I'm French. No, Canadian French. And I said, I speak French. And immédiatement, il commençait à parler français avec moi, tout de suite, comme ça. And immédiatement, je réponds, bien sûr, je réponds comme ça, par français, voilà. And he says, oh, wow. When people say they speak French, they usually say like bonjour, something like this. I was expecting a full-on conversation. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's hilarious. That's great. So Paul, so you grew up here, you know, did you grow up in Phoenix? This is where you grew up, really? It was in Phoenix?
No, in Surprise in the West Valley.
Oh,
Grew up
surprise
there
over
when
there.
I was
Well, 'cause we're both in
just,
Phoenix. For the record, those of you watchings, we're in Phoenix together.
that is important. Yeah.
And he was about to bring his sexy self over here, but I'm really paranoid about people being within the
Scaredy
uh,
cat.
you know, otherwise I would have had the sexiness all over up in here. So so Paul, so what got you in, so I know you work with your community. So what inspires you about working in your community?
Right. I think it's just because my whole life I've lived in a very kind of marginalized community, and even today as that is, and so kind of just when you're always in that marginalized sense, you always feel compelled to be better and do better in front of people, and just coming from a place where you're growing up very poor, you know, even well until I was a young adult, still, you know, eating one time a day, not knowing what the future holds, kind of having a very bleak outlook on everything. Um, just being in that part most of my life. And when you can live that, you know the sympathies, you know the struggles, you want help and you give help back. But now, just when you're in a different situation, you don't forget your roots. Most people don't ever forget their roots. And I have like a bleeding heart. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. And so when I see someone in need, even when it's homeless people, every now and again, I'm like, hey, you know, come to my house, get showered up, shave, have dinner with me. You know, just you just have those things that can really help brighten somebody else's day. Because happiness and community success really is a ripple effect. And if you can reach people, you know, basically, here's what happens, right? When you move up in life, what do? You move away. You move to somewhere nicer. You move out of the problem. But I believe firmly in staying in your community. You have to persevere. And so I believe in staying where I'm at right now, which is a much poorer area of Phoenix, and helping those people who I consider to be my neighbors, and it's really enriching. So I'm not planning on moving away anytime soon.
I love it. And is commenting and she's going, happiness is giving.
100%.
And it's so true, because part of this, and Mika and I, we talk a lot actually, but
Okay.
she's probably nodding her head right now going like, yeah, because here's what I know about giving. Giving is the one thing that helps us to get over our mindset of scarcity, right? That I don't have enough. And it starts with us being able to let go and have that non-attachment and saying, well, let me give you to help you. And it's interesting to hear that about you, Paul, because you know, in the time that we did spend time here in my office when I first met you, you know, we didn't really cover this, obviously. And, you know, I don't know if you've seen my show not long enough, but everybody knows the story already. And that is that I too am a product of extreme poverty. You know, I grew up with a single mother who raised two boys on $500 a month. And you get that, you know, you ate once a month. I mean, once a month, that too. No, but you ate once a day, right? It was typically dinner tortillas and, you know, beans and rice. And that was what our staple was. And like today, I was in a group and I said, you know, I was so happy. I remember 17 years old, I wrote it in my journal. I was so happy I found 25 cents. And with that 25 cents, and you'll connect with this, what it reminded me of, in that moment, I was like, I can now go buy an apple for lunch. Like I can actually eat lunch now because I found 25 cents to buy an apple.
Yeah.
And you're so right, because, you know, as we break through the cycle of poverty, I got my master's degree in education in 2010. And Harvey Pine, she talks about this thing called the cycle of poverty. And essentially it's, you know, our economics impacts, you know, where we grow up and how our education and our earnings and so forth. And she had said that very, very few people, and I forget the percentage, that actually breaks out of the cycle of poverty. And so it's actually a very difficult and it's a very vicious cycle that goes over and over. And luckily, I was one of them. Sounds like you're one of them, that we were able to break out of that. And at the same time, like you just said, not lose track of where we came from.
Yeah. A huge part of it's just male role models, right? There is an absence of that. And when you finally make it somewhere and your keys to success and those people who help you get there, and then you're like, okay, bye, you know, I'm forsaking my people, my community. How are you going to help your other neighbors get out of that same situation. You have to stay in your area and help lift them up, because that cycle continues to perpetuate. If there's no role models, there's no support, there's no tax dollars, right? It's a complete domino effect. So those words are 100% correct.
Tax dollars funded by W-2 earners, not entrepreneurs, especially when you work with a tax planner like me.
Exactly.
Well, you know why that is, right? You know why that is, Paul? Do you know why entrepreneurs who work with tax planners like me tend to pay the least amount of taxes legally? Do you want to know why that is?
You know what's funny? I had a talk with some millionaire friend recently who works with a lot of community stuff like that, and he says when he was on the out crowd, when in the poor group, so to speak, he really frowned upon rich people and said, they're just hoarding all their wealth. And he says when he's kind of moved into his new circle of influence, that many things in the community are actually funded by these individuals. And so when it comes to them maybe paying less taxes or whatever, it maybe comes from a different place than what most people conceive of. I'm sure you have a different angle on that.
Because what I was going to say is that so in my book, The ABCs of Deductions, an Entrepreneur's Tax to Write-Offs, still on sale. In my book, I talk about how Uncle Sam wants us as entrepreneurs, that's you, Paul, as well, wants us to be successful. And the reason why is because he wants us to take charge of our own destiny. He wants us to be so successful that the money that we bring in, you see, here's what I learned a while ago. Coming from no money, when you make money, all of a sudden you're like, I want to hoard it and keep it all to myself because you never had money, right? And so because of that, the mindset of scarcity kicks in and fear and all that other bullshit, right? So what he wants us to do is to recognize that every time we make a buck as a business owner, revenue, right? Every time we do, the money, which is really a reflection of our energy, flows through and out of us and goes out somewhere else. So what I mean by this is that we're taking charge. We as entrepreneurs, we are creating a whole entire society. We are responsible. Believe the amount of responsibility, which is, let's cycle back to what you do, and that is to offer voluntary benefits for employees. Because we as the business creators create this environment. We create this. Like, I'm responsible for 2 mouths that I feed for my employees, right? That's the truth. That is the responsibility I bear as a business owner. And Uncle Sam goes, you know what? You're taking care of them, but you're also taking care of yourself. So I'm going to let you deduct all these various related things to make that money. And so that's why, Paul, like what you offer in Colonial Life is important, because he says, look, you can pay them a wage and deduct it, of course, but you can also offer them a benefit and also deduct it, because you're helping someone else also take charge. And so we end up paying less taxes as a result. So we have more money to go and invest it back into our businesses, back into ourselves, right? Whereas the W-2 earner has a guaranteed income, even though we can argue all day long on that, but they have a guaranteed income in the sense that every 2 weeks or however they get paid, right? They get an amount of money, and that's what they go live off and contribute to society. The downfall to that, of course, is that they pay the highest amount of taxes, but there's a reason for that, because we as entrepreneurs, as you know, take on a high risk. Like, Paul, if you stopped going around looking for insurance and to sell employee benefits, would your revenue dry up?
Well, maybe just to counter what you just said there, wouldn't like a 1099 be paying the most in taxes because you have to pay both the employer and the employee side? The W-2 only plays the employee.
I wish I had like one of those like buttons that I could put like the word false.
Oh man.
All right, Paul, I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is great. Okay, so I'm about to educate you. Are you ready to be Bengalized?
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
Yes. Okay, I'm totally willing to Bengalize you because everybody else is about to be Bengalized watching this. So, all right, check this out. Ready? I thought you just love that. All right. So a W-2 is this form that employees get, right? Let's say, for example, when I used to work for an employer, I used to work at a CPA firm. So I would work, I'd get my salary, and then at the end of the year, I get this form called a W-2, and then I would file my taxes, right? When you're a independent contractor. All right. So you're not an employee, meaning I don't have any control over you. I can't control you, Paul. I can't put a gag on you and spank you because you're an independent contractor, right? So
We don't need no help.
yeah. So because you're an independent contractor, we use a form called a 1099. So the 1099 is like a miscellaneous form. There's a whole bunch of things that go on there, by the way, not just what we call non-employee compensation, which is really for the business. We could put rents on there, interest shows up on there, different things show up on there. But the moment that you are issued a 1099, in the eyes of Uncle Sam, you are seen as being a business owner. You are entitled to the same over 400 deductions that everybody else is entitled to, including Amazon, that only paid, I think, $168 million in taxes on over $3 billion in revenue and deferred over $900,000 in taxes to the future. You, my other fellow entrepreneurs out there, we are all entitled to the same exact rules. That's the beauty
So
of
you're saying the potential is there.
The potential is there. So the common mistake, Paul, that people make that get 1099s is this. They fear at the end of the day that they're going to owe more money. So they lack the planning. They're like, I'm not going to plan because, I don't know. And they're also afraid that if they do deduct the things that they hear about there, that they're going to somehow get audited, they're going to go to jail, they're going to owe more money. And these are true fears, right? But when we do it right, when we play inside the sandbox correctly and fair following the rules, everyone gets the G.I. Joe, everyone gets to build a mound, right? When we follow the same rules, then the reward is we pay less taxes. So you're absolutely right. A 1099er who's a business owner, that's technically true. Paul, you're the CEO of Colonial Life in a way because they treat you like an independent contractor. So you're in charge of your own life. So now you, by default, pay a mandatory 15.3% tax over a net earnings of $400. And then your ass is subject to 15.3% plus another tax called ordinary income tax, which has a variable range between 0 and 37.5%, something like that. So when you look at that and add it together with FICA tax, which is the 15.3, the average 1099er who does not plan typically pays upwards in the 40 to 50% in tax. That's the truth. But with proactive tax planning, you can cut that bill, the effective rate, the whole entire rate. On average, we cut it all the way down between 10 to about 12%. And it comes with understanding what you can deduct, what you can write off, like voluntary benefits, and when and how. So that's the ultimate truth. So you, my friend, are an entrepreneur. So by the way, from now on, you should start referring to yourself as I'm Paul Spears II, the CEO of, and then the name of your company, because that's the truth.
Yeah. No, and I do have the approach that, hey, I'm a business owner just like yourself.
Yep.
So, I'm always, whenever somebody comes to me and says, hey, I can educate you about something, whether they can or can't, I can't know that until they talk to me about it. It's worth the 5-minute conversation with your neighbor or, a professional, however you want to see it. There's no harm in that. And that's actually the huge advantage that we use at Colonial as well, is just the pre-tax basis for our plans. So many of our plans we do on a pre-tax basis. So the irony is the owner thinks I'm there to sell him something, but I'm just here to offer him a solution, of which when his own employees participate and protect themselves, he's actually saving hundreds or even thousands in FICA taxes each year for his employees paying for their own taxes or their own benefits. It sounds almost too good to be true, but as you know.
Here's the thing, right? It does sound too good to be true, but it really is true because it's been written that way. For example, next week, I'm doing a live webinar and it's called How to Shift Your Personal Expenses into Your Business and Have the Business Write It Off during COVID.
That's a long title you got there.
I know, it's super long, right? But it turns out that there's a provision in the law that allows us to shift some of our personal related expenses into our business temporarily, especially during this crisis. Because you see, Paula, you know this, right? Each time you spend $1 through your business for business related purposes, Uncle Sam goes, guess what? You get to use that dollar and spend it in your business, right? For business related. And he turns around and says, now, Paul, you don't have to cut me a check for that 15.3% tax. And you don't have to cut me a check on the ordinary income tax rate as well. Like this is the truth. So believe it or not, my book, The ABCs of Deductions, that's why I say like people who read it are going to instantly save 15.3% in tax overnight. In the voluntary contributions that you're talking about with the benefits, here's how it works, right? From a tax point of view, which is really important. The employer gets to deduct the cost of the contribution, right? The benefit. So let's say it's $30 for the benefit and they get to deduct. It's not typical, but I just follow my logic here. And so, of course, they're normally would be paying FICA tax, and the employer is picking up 7.65% of FICA tax. So for every $100 I pay an employee, not a contractor, an employee, I will have to submit to the government 7.65%. The employee also submits 7.65%. That comes out to 15.3%, give or take, right? So when you're self-employed, you are becoming the employee and the employer, which is why it's the full 15.3%. We call it self-employed income tax, but it's really our FICA tax. And of course, Uncle Sam goes, yeah, instead of passing the total burden to the employee who's working for you, let's split the cost and split it 50-50. Now, here's interesting, though, is that the employer actually gets a double win because the employer is going to pay, yes, the wage and the 7.65% in FICA tax, but he or she is going to deduct that cost from their net income, which results in a lower tax bill. So the employer is always in the win-win position. And employers, especially when they start offering benefits, it's a win-win for both because now I don't have to pay that 7.65%. My employee doesn't have to pay that 7.65%, which means that we just added 15.3% to everybody, right? Like I got 7, right? So that's the beautiful thing about employee benefits.
Yeah, and as it is beautiful, right? And I wish there were more open-minded people out there who would just take, that could be condensed, or basically everything we're talking about in order to let them know what's in it for them, right? Could be said in about 3 to 5 minutes, but people just think they either know it all or they're being sold something and they just like get out of here. And that's powerful, very powerful information for everybody, the employee and the employer.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think we have about 17 and a half seconds, or maybe it's even less, to show up and make an impression, right? Which is why I always say show up authentically as you are. And of course, if wherever I go, people know I'm a big ass boom when I walk into wherever I'm going. Everyone who sees this show can agree. It's just how I am, my personality type. But you're right, we do have just very precious few seconds. So what I shared today in one of my mastermind classes for fellow tax planners like myself is I shared this advice. And I said, here's the thing. First and foremost, it's what is their pain? What are they suffering from, right? What is their pain? And then ultimately, what is your solution to their pain? And sometimes we as entrepreneurs have no freaking clue what their pain is. And so we guess, I think their pain is X, Y, and Z, right? I think that's what it is. And so then we try to target that pain with a solution that we know the solution because we're geniuses at what we do. You're a genius at what you do. I'm a genius at what I do, right? So it's like, okay, so now it's about formulating the right words that hits, this is your pain. This is my solution to your pain. But how do you start it? Well, my coach Iman taught me that what we have to do is we have to go out and find out first. Then my other coach, who I'm working with right now with Chevelle McPherson, she goes a step further and says, you got to get him on that phone and you got to ask him, what are your pains? What are your fears? What are your challenges? What are your dreams? Because believe it or not, people will share that with you. So when you go into a door into or you go to knock on a door with a client or something, it too sweet in like 17 seconds, right? Hi, I'm Paul Spears. I'm the founder of do, or, I da. And then it's right away. Like I help employers find value in their employees. And we do that through these benefits. So it's kind of like, it's about their pain, and then it's about your solution, and it has to happen fast.
Well, hopefully your creeping skills are on point. I did buy your book on pre-order, so I have that.
Yes.
Rummage through everything, but it's very true. I do have a much different sales approach than most people, and I've been told that from people much higher up than myself. And it is really just having that genuine conversation. Rarely have I ever sold people the benefits that I try to introduce to their business on the first touch. Usually it's touch 8 or 10. And even if they say no to me, I'm like, you know what, that's okay. I have a local Google Guides account. Let me think, just for giving me your 2 minutes, let me write you a 5-star review. I buy something in their store and I write that review. Or it's just like having a genuine conversation, and people will be like, you know what, like maybe come back in August. And so I put in my calendar, and I respect that time. I don't come back a day before. So it's really just identifying that. And a very powerful book that I almost finished reading, it's called How to Win Friends and How to Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That book was written in 1936, old book, but it's about human nature, and everything in there is still just as relevant. And it really does say, like, hey, find out what their needs are, what their wants and dreams. And once you find that out, then you can have more of an honest consultation and discussion with them and learn what it is how you can help them, essentially.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're both providing, everyone that's a business owner out there, right? We are providing a solution to someone's pain. So the way I normally, when I show up and I talk, well, we're talking, but the normal thing I normally like to say is that if we think about this for one moment, every single person, every living being, from even the cockroach that lived with me for 3 months named Oscar, who that's a whole, watch the other episode on what did a cockroach and wisdom teach me. And that's where you'll hear the story. But, every living being has one wish, one. And the only singular wish that everybody has is the wish to be happy. That's it, plain and simple. And so we spend our entire lives chasing what we think is happiness. And I know for me personally, I discovered that having personal financial security is what created a degree of happiness inside of me, because it was able for me to go, okay, phew, I don't have to worry about paying for things. Like I have the resources to pay, right? I have the resources to continue to make an impact, a positive impact for others. And that's what it's really about. It's about every single one of us. We all have a different solution to the one thing that we all want. And that is pure ultimate happiness. Paul, for you, what you bring to the pain of the employee or the employer is maybe he's got disgruntled employees because he can't afford to pay more, right? And he looks at the tax and he's like, I'm not paying an extra, 7.65%. Screw that. So I'm not going to give raises, right? And he's suffering because, or she's suffering because they want to have more labor. They want to have more dedicated people. That's their suffering. And you bring them happiness.
Yeah, and I would argue that anybody who is listening to this or will be listening to it, whatever you want to say, money is a central premise and aspect to that. Because otherwise, why would you be learning about how to save money from your taxes, right? If money wasn't important ultimately, and that's not a bad thing. I'm sure there's maybe people here as well, just like Nika, right, who just loves you, right? So maybe she's like, I don't care about taxes. I just want to give me some of that Jonathan.
Yeah,
so, that's possible.
A lot of people.
That's possible, but again, money does drive that, and people want to learn about these things and be educated, and then learn how to actually implement that. So that money is part of the pain. How can we make money not be part of the problem?
And I think it's so true because I had one of my former many boyfriends. One day we were hanging out and he had said, so like Jonathan, like what's it like to have your lifestyle? What's it like to be the owner of all these companies and all this stuff? And I just said to him, I said, you know what it's like? It's like not having to worry about how do I cover things that I would normally be panicking about. That's what it's like. It's the security. It's just knowing that every time I go out somewhere, I meet you, Paul, we hang out, in the future, we'll go catch a couple of drinks, right? It's knowing that one, I can cover paying for a shot together. And number two, knowing that Uncle Sam is going to subsidize some of that because you and I are doing business together. So that's what gives me kind of like, that's what I do in my job. It's like everywhere I go, I'm always going, how does Uncle Sam subsidize this? How can I connect this to my business? How is he wanting me to be successful? And so that's what really it's about. For me, that's what it is. Because when you have no money, like I said, all of a sudden there's like money. And then there's a new thing that can creep up, which is the fear of making more money. And the fear is that the more money I make, the more taxes I pay. Right?
Yeah. Or the bigger target you put on yourself. And so, of course, now we have to overcome that fear, right? We have to now work on that and say, well, the more money I make, the less tax I pay, especially when I'm working with a certified tax planner like Jonathan, right? That's important. Or like you just said, the target. Is the target on you because you are contributing back to your society, back to your community, and helping others to lift up out of the same where you've been? Or are you just bashing and doing everything else like that maybe one should not do? Well, the bigger target being just the possible target of an audit, right? So people are afraid of like drawing more attention. Money, I'm drawing more attention. Uncle Sam wants that money. So I think that's a big part of it, why people are scared as well, and they're okay kind of with more of their status quo or mundane business that they are doing currently.
You're so right. As a matter of fact, so I offer a program called TODS. It's a tax optimization discovery session. And in this, we actually provide, after a client invests with us, we actually provide them an audit risk analysis. So we actually tell them, like, based on what we see, these are the chances of you being audited based on what we're looking at. Because you're absolutely right. That is the fear of being audited, right? The more money you make, the more you'll be audited. But here's something else, though, that's really important. Even if they audit you, as long as you have the right D, and I'm not talking about yours or mine, but as long as you have the right D, which is documentation.
I was going to say deductions.
As long as you have the right documentation, right? As long as it's within the law and it's following the law, babies, like all of a sudden now you can fight them back. You can be like, when they say to you, by the way, this is the most number one common audit risk for most business owners. Are y'all listening to me right now? Which is this: mileage. Your automobile is the number one lowest hanging fruit in an audit. And the reason for that is because everyone that I know does not keep good records as it relates to their driving habits. So one should be using a tracker on their phone, like Mile IQ or any of those other ones out there that tracks where you're at. So you can say, I'm at for business, I'm at personal, right? Like, it's about that, because what happens is the government will go, Paul, show me your mileage, show me your logbook that you can prove that you drove 20,000 miles. Because I know, Paul, you drive everywhere. I know that about you. And so he goes, show me the money, right? Show me the document, show me the logbook. And then you're like, what logbook? What logbook? Right? Then you come knocking on my door, not you, but they're knocking on my door. JB, help me out of this jam. Help me out of this jam. Right? They want to audit my miles. And then I'm like, I don't know. Right? So it's like, so we can be proactive and use trackers to prove where we're at. So here's the thing, right? I know people. Now, I personally don't do audits. I don't represent people during audits. I represent people during collections when they're behind on their taxes and then settling for their collections. So, because that's a process. They audit you and then they assess the tax. But I know my colleagues, a lot of my colleagues who will testify to say that during audits, sometimes they even get more money back during the audit, which is really crazy and really profound. But here's the thing. If you have your right documentations lined up, that's all that matters, baby. Nothing to fear but fear itself, right? So I thank you for that, because that's true. If we just have the right big D, we're good to go. We just got to prove it.
And can't help you if you can't help yourself, right? So that's kind of the premise goes along with that. It's very true.
Yes. So, Paul, we got about 10 minutes left, and I want to ask your sexiness. What would be your nuggets of wisdom that you have discovered in your evolution of becoming the powerful, amazing person that you are today?
Um, so oftentimes in the insurance industry, premium dollars written, garnished, projected, whatever it is, that's kind of the big talk, right? And like, oh, there's a lot of money in insurance. And that kind of drives people with their plans or how they try to write up businesses or businesses they try to target, how hard they try to push, so to speak. For myself, a life goal that I've always had, or wisdom, I guess, was that if you do the right thing, everything else will fall in place. So if you do the right thing for the right person at the right time, everything else will fall in place. So as far as like, is it profitable making the stop, trying to connect with this company and get them to kind of see the light when it comes to benefits on the 10th time? Does that make sense money wise? And I think as long as you do the right thing, eventually it will be, because there's something called retention, right? And just building those lifelong relationships. One was just with the clients. He was a Hungarian guy, and we were speaking German with each other. And in that culture, it's very focused upon, they want to test you to see if you're getting annoyed with them, if their stories are worth it to you, or if you're just like, you know what, this guy talks too much, I'm out here. And I stood in there and I talked to him the entire time. And in the end, he really appreciated that. And he was like, you know what, I can tell you're a great and genuine guy to work with. I wasn't interested, but let's talk more. So that's just kind of one of the stories on, I think, if you use that one simple concept, it'll blossom for everything else in your life.
And it's interesting. And I think, in the middle of something, and I think you said, like, do you have about 30 seconds or something like this? And next thing you know, we were talking for, I don't know what, like an hour or something like that.
That was a good 30 minutes at least.
It was a good time. And, it's interesting because, like, I know you said it to me and I said it to you, and I really enjoyed, and I think that's important for me too, just like I'm sure everybody else, like the Hungarian client you just talked about. Sometimes, we just want to be seen and we want to be heard. And, it's not about the transaction, right? It's not about just busting a nut and leaving. Sometimes you actually want to make love and actually form a relationship with somebody. This is just as true in business as it is in our personal lives.
That's why I work directly in my own community, because I know I'm around these people, I see them, I interact with them. And that's an important part of it, not necessarily the people who are 30 miles away from you. Not that that makes them less of a person or less important, but that does make them less relevant. And that's just the cold hard truth. And the relevancy is proximity, people around you. So I think when you just do the right thing, everything else really definitely does fall into place.
Yep.
And that's something I'm always going to stick by.
I love it. I love it. 'Cause it's true. I mean, we stick it, as long as we stick in our truth, right? We stay with our truth, we own it, we embrace it, and we ultimately accept ourselves for who we really are, right? All the good things, all the bad things, because I'm sure you and I both know this. The moment that we accept who we are in all of its glory, there's no words, there's no actions that can stop us from fulfilling our true life's purpose. And that's the
Yeah,
great
I
thing
think
about happiness.
it really is about just knowing the person's heart. So these are kind of divisive times, right? A lot of trigger words and topics and are kind of around right now, especially. And people are really polarized, especially here in Arizona. And you hear a lot of things from business owners who maybe are just kind of callous and they don't really care what you think, and they're just going to say it in front of you. But they could be testing you, to see like how can you control your passions or your manipulators on the outside. But it's really about just building relationships and knowing that at the end of the day, all we want is happiness. And people have different ideologies about how happiness is reached, but they don't mean ill. So oftentimes people say things that are really off color, kind of despicable. And but because I've taken the time out to know that person, to know who they are and what they are, I know their heart, and I don't get offended when they say very offensive things, because I know that's not where their heart lies. So I think just a great tip for when you go out and talk to people is be slow to anger, be patient, and know the person, know their heart. And once you know their heart, if they say something little off color, just let it go right past you.
That's all you can do. Practice non-attachment. You just kind of go, okay, moving on, right? Like it is what it is. Yeah, that's probably the biggest, that's a huge key, as a matter of fact, right? And that also plays into the truth that neither one of us, thank goodness, are permanent in the way we think, are permanent in the way that we are, right? Everything is in this constant state of change, constantly. You know what I mean? We could look at the scroll at the bottom here, it says it's interactive, and it's already off the screen, right? That just shows you that it's constant change. So we ourselves as people are also in a constant state of change as well. The person that I was when you met me a few weeks ago or months ago now, completely radically different showing up, right? As this is how we evolve as people. And which is why, like you just said beautifully, why we can't be attached to what people say or to their beliefs or anything of that nature, because we can then kind of be in that state of peace, that state of calm. As a practicing Buddhist, one of the things that we always are reminded of is that nothing is being done to us. It's how we are perceiving the world outside of our eyeballs, basically, how we're perceiving it, and then how our mind is translating into what we're seeing and what we're hearing. And then that, depending on our mindset in that moment, will determine how we react. Do we get angry? Do we stay calm? Do we laugh? Do we giggle, right? It's all based upon our perception of how we're perceiving the outside from our eyes. And so that's really what you're also talking about, which is, JB, I can see people for who they really are, which isn't the people that the nastiness that can be there, the craziness that can be there. I can just see them as who they are, authentically who they are. And that's powerful, because isn't that what you do with voluntary benefits?
100%. It's very integral. Got to keep a level head and know that you're trying to service people in their community and protect their bottom line. And you can't do that if you took their struggles and their vulnerability, both personally and financially, and you make that your problem. That's not your problem. That's not your cross to bear. Don't do it. Let them be the vehicle that let them be enlightened and then help protect themselves. And that's what it's all about.
I love it. So Paul, contact you at paul.spears@coloniallifesales.com. So if you'd like to get together with this sexy man and have him have a virtual coffee or virtual wine, or I'm sure whatever the guy's up to.
I'm not afraid to go in person.
Yeah, if you're like me, I'm like, I don't want anyone around me. So someone like Paul, if you want to just get to know him a little bit better, get to know about how his benefits that he offers can really save you guys 15.3% in taxes, not only for you and your employee, but for everybody else, really. Reach out to Paul. Obviously, Paul, you're a really genuine dude. I really appreciate it. I fell in love with you when you first came into my office, because I could see this authenticity about you that's about caring, it's about love, it's about kindness. And I really, really appreciated it. I really appreciate you. And I feel that way. And I know that everyone who's going to meet you is going to feel the same exact way. So if you guys are tired of working with somebody who's more about the transaction and not about the relationship, you got to connect with Paul Spears at coloniallifesales.com. You've been watching this show for almost an hour. If you like my shows, I'm highly encouraging, if you'd be so kind as to subscribe below. Make sure to hit the alert buttons to know when I come on here at random, sometimes when I get random ideas and speak freely about different things. Last but not least, if you've not gotten my book yet, I actually have, apparently my link is not here. So apparently, well, there you have it. Well, in that case, here's what you can do. Go look it up. The ABCs of Deductions, an Entrepreneur's Guide to Tax Write-Offs. I know for a fact it's going to save you 15.3% tax overnight, and it's going to add up to tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. Take yesterday, for example. I was working with a client that's come on board. We are going to save them overnight $238,000 in taxes. So this is the real deal. This is what happens when people work with people like me and people like Paul, because Paul is actually helping to add to everyone's bottom line as well. So with that, Paul, thank you so much for being a guest here on my show. I'm so appreciative. If you're interested in coming to my webinar, here's the link for it. It's actually kind of complex, but it's https://bit.ly/3913YE To register for next week, your fully tax deductible investment of $97 will actually be offset by 15.3% tax, which is great, right? That's what Uncle Sam subsidizes it at. So it's actually not $97 if you think about it. So what's beautiful is that you're going to learn how to. Yes, Paul.
Oh, I was just hoping to get like one final word in there, but finish what you were saying.
Oh, yeah. So you're going to learn how to transfer your personal expenses into your business expense during COVID tax-free. Okay, Paul, what did you want to say?
Yeah, of course. And if I have no qualms about people having my number as well. I do have a Facebook page. So if you want to go to Paul Spears II, just look for that and you'll see an insurance agent page. But if you want to, should I type my number here in the...
Yeah, you can totally give it to me and I'll put it in the banner. We can even put it in the comments as well because I'm interacting live as well.
Yeah, I spend a lot of my time just speaking. Another thing is helping foreign students learn English. So that's why I spend a lot of my time doing that. And if someone just needs a friend or someone to talk to, it doesn't matter. I'm definitely here for people around me. So you're not bothering me at all. I love people. So feel free to have my personal number there and I'll happily reach back out. The only warning is my phone doesn't always get text messages for whatever reason. So you can always email me and we can always do that as well.
And he only my show, so don't get it.
Trying to poach me elsewhere. Hey, you got to have me back on again, Jonathan. But thank you so much for having me on, and everyone who listened to my insurance rabble.
I love it. Paul, thank you so much for being so brave. When you first said to me, I don't know what I would say. I don't know what I would say on your show. I don't know how and I was just like, don't you worry. Listen, I'm an experienced older man. I will take care of what's going on.
I appreciate that.
All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you watch this in the morning, the evening, or post-production or whatever else, I want to give a thanks to you guys for watching my show and loving and appreciating everything that I'm doing. And without you guys watching, without you guys subscribing, without you guys helping to promote me and everything else, it's not possible. So I really am thankful to every single one of you that watches my episodes and my shows for giving me the opportunity to bring my message to you all, which is, once we fully embrace who we are, there is no stopping us. There is no words and there's no actions that can prevent us from being who we are supposed to be in this world. So with that, have a great night. And Paul, thank you. And we're going offline and boom, 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 boom.